Creating an outline for your term paper. First things first, if you're going to write a paper for this course, if you're going to write an outline to help you get organized for writing your paper, the first thing you need to do is select your primary articles and then read them thoroughly. Make sure that you understand what the heck they're talking about. Make sure that you have looked at some of the things that they mention in terms of previous results that led them to start this investigation. What got them on this path? Looking at an introduction for the research hypothesis that the primary papers are trying to provide information for. You'll need to go through every section. You want to look at the methods, even if there's techniques in the methods that you don't completely understand. Now's the time to investigate these topics, these methods, and figure out what are the tests and what are the controls. No matter what kind of test subject it is, you want to know how they were selected. Is it a breed of animal that shows a particular sensitivity to a particular problem, or is it just a generic model? If it's a group of people, how many people? Are they the same age, same weight, same sex? Do they have similar activity levels? Do they have similar, if it's a disease, do they have similar, have they made similar progress through the stages of this disease? So are they really a homogeneous cohort, or are they somewhat heterogeneous? And then you also want to know what are the primary research findings, their experimental findings, and what the author's primary interpretation is. Next step. You're conceiving your term paper. What topic does your paper truly address? If you're comparing two papers, you need to make some decisions about what's the viewpoint that you'd like to take as you discuss these papers. And are there supplementary papers that are going to be useful to you? You're going to need more than just two papers to write this term paper. Go through the papers trying to identify which elements from each paper will be useful to you and where you think you might use that information. For example, there might be an interesting study that's quoted in your papers that refers to previous work. You'd like to be able to say, I'd like to put that into my introduction too. Maybe go look up that paper so that you're sure that what the authors have quoted is actually what was done in that previous report. I've had circumstances where I looked at a paper and I thought, oh, this previous paper must be really interesting. I've gone to look up the previous paper and found that maybe the authors made a mistake when they put the paper in their reference list. And the paper that I looked up did not contain the information that they said it did. If that's the truth, you don't want to be perpetuating that wrong-headed idea. You don't want to be citing something for reasons that the paper doesn't really support. So it's at this time now that you're doing the reading and you're prepping for writing this outline, that's when you dig in and try to put all the elements in place. The next thing you do is start to decide on what your organizing theme is going to be. And some of this is really trivial these days because of the way word processes are built. You can pick a style for your outline that will be bulleted, it'll be numbered, they'll have bold paragraph headings, but that's just window dressing. What you really want to do is think about the logical flow of information. In what order do I want to put these points in my outline? I think, from my point of view, it's important to start with a general idea and then move to the more specific cases that support that idea. Using that general to specific helps you to introduce the area that you're interested in and then draw the reader into the particular experiments that are done in your primary papers that explain this concept. As you start to work through this outline, then you want to add in all of the support information that fits into each major topic category. Start with the most general ideas, and then you move to the more specific ideas. You want to have an introduction. You need an introduction. Your paper should be describing to your reader this area of physiology that you've decided to focus on and why the experiments that you've selected as your primary papers are important to that area. You want to identify test subjects that are used in those papers and the important techniques. Maybe it's a novel technique that only this research group uses. Maybe it's a technique that everybody uses, but applied to this particular subject, it gives us valuable information. You'd like to not necessarily give a word-for-word accounting of the methods and techniques, but you do need to say how the experiments are going to be done and what are the controls. Are there nuances or anything in particular that's special about this technique in terms of its sensitivity, for example? Perhaps it's a technique that measures ion channel activity. Perhaps it's a technique that looks at conformation of changes in proteins. Perhaps it's something that gives you some insights into blood chemistry. You need to make sure that you understand what's going on and that you can convey that to your readers. As you get to the results section, you want to organize some thoughts around each of the important results from the papers. So if there's a figure that you'd like to describe or a table that's important, what do you want to tell the reader about that figure or table? And then use that as some of the information that you put into your outline. So in the results section, it's not just that they saw that the concentration of a certain enzyme went up, but the concentration of that enzyme increased because of a particular stimulus and that it has certain consequences. In the discussion section, then you are going to be summarizing everything that you've been writing about from the introduction through the methods and results forward, including our interpretation that the authors have made for this particular work. You want to think about not only what did they say, but have you learned something that makes you think, I have everything I need? Or have you learned some things about this particular topic that says, while I've learned something, there are still unanswered questions, things that I would like to have more information about, and that perhaps isn't in this report, but I would speculate that it would be the next topic of research for these researchers, or perhaps other people in this field. And then, of course, you want to thoroughly document everything. You want to say what your sources are, and you want to have a complete bibliography. So, starting your outline. Start with your major headings. Start easy. Start with the major headings. And then, within each section of your paper, start thinking about what goes there, what belongs with your major headings. If you're thinking about, for example, a new heart valve, well, what's the structure of the heart valve? Is it completely biological, or are there some special treatments that have to be done in order to make it compatible with the implantation in a human? If you're thinking about a mutation that occurs that causes a disorder, then you want to say what may be the root of the mutation. Is it spontaneous? Is it triggered by something else? Is it a change in the activity of a transcription factor? What happened to allow this mutation to be a problem, or perhaps a benefit, depending on your perspective? Put things together in logical order. Then set it down, walk away, go do something else. Let it just sort of sit there while you think about other things. I guarantee that one of the things that happens when you do this is that you come back and you look at it and you say, oh, this doesn't belong in this position. relatively well organized flow of ideas that goes from the beginning of your paper to the end of your paper. You will need at least 2 primary research papers to start this project, and I expect each of you to have at least 6 basic research papers that you use and need support. That's a total of 8 research papers, and many students have more than 8 papers as they write their reports. You don't have to have every paper at the point of writing your outline, but you certainly want them by the time you're putting together your final draft. And so there's no time like the present to identify the primary papers and then start thinking about, as you understand them better, what other pieces of information do you need to tell a story. Your outline deadline currently is October 28th, and I still expect that this is achievable. Even though I'm extending the deadline for selecting your advisor, I think that if you have started your search and started to look at some papers, that you should still be able to read your primary papers and have a good idea of how you're going to organize information by the end of October. So let's shoot for that October 28th deadline. With a well-written outline, writing your paper is just basically filling in the details in the order that you laid it out in your outline. One of the things that sometimes happens in this process is, as you put things together, you have to reorganize the outline. That's okay. The outline is a template that you're trying to use as a framework, but as you put the information in, if it seems like the information is going in a different direction, maybe you stop, reconsider, revise your outline, and then move forward. And of course, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to submit your outline to your paper advisor, and the paper advisor is going to give you some hints about how they think you could organize ideas better. They may ask you to revise your outline before you start working on it. That is perfectly reasonable, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happens to more than a few of you. All right, so get started with your reading. Get started with your organizing your ideas. Ask your advisor for assistance if things aren't coming together the way you hope they are. And, of course, you can always contact me. Good luck with your paper.